3 tons of cocaine a year, an estimated $80 million a month. A body count so high that even Pablo Escobar allegedly said he feared her. They called Griselda Blanco the Godmother of Cocaine. For nearly a decade, she ran one of the most violent drug empires the United States had ever seen. On September 3, 2012, she was gunned down on a Medellin street by 2 men on a motorcycle. It was the exact method of killing she helped invent. To understand how violence wrote her ending, you have to go back to where it all began. Born on February 15, 1943, in the barrios of Santo Domingo on the outskirts of Medellin, Griselda Blanco entered a world that offered little comfort and even less safety. Her father, a carpenter, faded from the picture early, leaving her mother, Ana Restrepo, to raise Griselda alone. Survival was a daily calculation. Their adobe home barely kept out the rain, and hunger gnawed at the family with relentless persistence. Family accounts describe Ana as harsh, resorting to beatings when money or food disappeared. Neighbors recalled a girl who learned quickly that rules could be bent or broken if it meant getting through another day. By the age of 9, Griselda was already stealing bread from market stalls. Police records and family testimony point to a childhood shaped by deprivation and violence, where theft was less a crime and more a necessity. The streets of Medellin offered few second chances. For a girl with no protection, toughness was not a choice, but a requirement. In 1954, a rumor began to circulate in the slums. A 9-year-old boy named Carlos Ramos went missing from a crowded market. Witnesses claimed a young girl, matching Griselda's description, was seen leading him away. Days later, his body was found in a shallow ditch. There was never a conviction, and the police files remained locked away, but the story took on a life of its own. Whether true or not, the legend of a child capable of murder took root in the neighborhood. From that point, fear and respect followed her in equal measure. At home, the cycle of abuse continued. Griselda's mother, overwhelmed and hardened by her own struggles, lashed out at the slightest provocation. Griselda's half-sister, Maria Cruz, would later recall in an interview that the beatings were frequent and severe. The message was clear: in this world, only the ruthless survived. By her early teens, Griselda was no longer just stealing to eat. Shoplifting became routine, and she soon graduated to running small-time hustles in the local markets, selling stolen cigarettes, smuggling cheap goods, always looking for the next angle. The police first recorded her name at age 17, arresting her for shoplifting and a small amount of marijuana. Even then, the officers noted her defiance. The scars of childhood, both visible and hidden, set the course for everything that followed. In a city where violence was currency, Griselda Blanco learned early that survival meant striking first and never showing weakness. By the early 1970s, Griselda Blanco's ambitions stretched far beyond the alleys of Medellin. She had already built a marijuana ring that moved product across Antioquia, working with street gangs and paying off local police when needed. But the profits from marijuana were limited, and Blanco saw a new opportunity rising in the shadows: cocaine. The demand from the United States was exploding, and the rewards promised to dwarf anything she had seen before. Her first marriage to Carlos Trujillo opened doors to a wider criminal network. Trujillo, a small-time smuggler, introduced her to contacts who moved goods from Colombia to the Caribbean. By 1973, Blanco began forging alliances with the Ochoa brothers, Juan David and Jorge Luis, 2 names that would soon become legendary in the Medellin Cartel. According to a 1973 U.S. Customs seizure report, a shipment of 20 kilograms of cocaine was traced back to a female Medellin associate. DEA records from that same year quietly confirmed what local police had already suspected. Blanco was now an exporter, not just a street hustler. Carlos later, a rising star in the smuggling world, took notice. Blanco arranged a meeting in a Medellin hotel, negotiating terms that gave her access to later's Caribbean routes. She offered reliability and muscle, promising to move product with a level of discipline and violence that few others could match. Later, known for his own brand of ruthlessness, agreed to a joint venture. The Ochoa brothers also trusted Blanco to oversee a coca front in Medellin, where she managed collection, processing, and shipments out of the country. These early partnerships were not just business deals, they were statements of intent. Blanco was no longer content to play the margins. She was building a pipeline to Miami, 1 kilo at a time, and assembling a cast of future cartel heavyweights. Every deal carried risk, but the rewards were extraordinary. By 1974, her network was moving enough cocaine to attract the attention of both Colombian police and United States federal agents. Her name began to surface in DEA surveillance logs, always in connection with larger, more sophisticated shipments. Blanco's rise was not the product of luck or inheritance. It was built on a willingness to take chances, to forge alliances with men who would later become her rivals or her victims. The foundation for her Miami empire was being laid, brick by brick, in the back rooms of Medellin. The streetwise girl had become a deal maker, and her ambitions were now truly transnational. In Miami, the cocaine trade ran on an industrial scale, and Griselda Blanco was its chief engineer. Her operation moved more than 3 tons of cocaine into the United States every year, enough to keep the streets of Miami, New York, and Los Angeles awash in powder. The shipments came in hidden inside fruit crates, stashed in secret compartments of chartered planes, or packed into speedboats racing through the Florida Keys under cover of darkness. Each load was a high-stakes gamble, but the flow rarely stopped for long. DEA records from 1985 estimate her network handled nearly 100 flights a year, with each flight carrying up to 30 kilograms of cocaine. The business demanded a fortress of infrastructure. Blanco's Miami base, tucked behind the facade of a laundromat called Golden Sands, served as the nerve center for counting, packaging, and dispatching the product. The warehouse in the Dadeland Mall parking lot became infamous after a 1982 raid uncovered stacks of cocaine hidden in banana crates, a method so routine that agents began calling it the fruit run. Logistics were handled by a strict hierarchy, street couriers known as coyotes, truck drivers called pilotos, and a layer of armed enforcers. The network stretched from Little Havana to Fort Lauderdale, pushing cocaine into every corner of South Florida and beyond. The money poured in with a speed that outpaced even the most cautious estimates. Internal cartel ledgers intercepted in 1984 tallied gross sales at nearly $80 million a month. At the street level, kilos sold for up to $50,000 each. The challenge was not earning cash, it was hiding it. In 1983, an IRS audit of Golden Sands found $12 million in unexplained deposits, all funneled through a single laundromat. Investigators traced the money through a web of restaurants, car dealerships, and beachfront condos, each one a front for washing dirty cash. IRS agent Miguel Alvarez later called it a masterclass in money laundering, noting that no one in Miami had ever seen so much cash move so quickly or so quietly. The sheer volume created its own logistical nightmares. Former DEA Special Agent Laura Rios described teams of couriers shuttling duffel bags stuffed with $100 bills to banks across the city, always careful to keep deposits under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Property records from 1981 to 1984 show Blanco and her associates buying up luxury condos in cash, sometimes paying with suitcases delivered in the middle of the night. Every dollar was a potential liability. If the authorities traced it, the whole empire could unravel. But for nearly a decade, the system held. The numbers alone staggered even seasoned investigators. More than 3 tons of cocaine a year, $80 million a month, 12 million laundered through a single laundromat. As one IRS agent put it after the Golden Sands audit, when we finally got a hold of her financial records, we realized we weren't looking at a drug ring. We were looking at a multinational corporation built on blood and fear. In Medellin, 1975, a new kind of killing sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The police homicide file from June 12th records a scene unlike anything investigators had seen before. A rival dealer, Luis Cardenas, gunned down in broad daylight by a shooter on the back of a speeding motorcycle. Witnesses described a two-person team, a driver and a gunman, moving with the precision of soldiers, vanishing into traffic before anyone could react. Forensic analysis later confirmed the use of an Uzi fired from a moving vehicle. The report noted the method as an anomaly, something that stood out against the city's usual patterns of violence. Criminologists now point to this as the first documented motorcycle drive-by assassination in Medellin. The technique did not emerge by accident. Griselda Blanco, already building her reputation as a strategist, recognized the limitations of traditional hits: too slow, too exposed, too easy for the target to escape or for police to intervene. The motorcycle offered something different: speed, surprise, and an almost surgical ability to strike and disappear. It was a tool for urban warfare, and Blanco wielded it with cold calculation. Within months, motorcycle hits became a signature of her enforcement squads, known as pistoleros. These teams operated with a simple, ruthless logic. The driver handled the escape, the shooter focused on the kill. Targets were often rivals, informants, or anyone who threatened the flow of cocaine or cash. The message was always the same: nowhere was safe, not the street, not the market, not even the steps of a church. Colombian criminologist Dr. Carlos Mendoza later wrote that the motorcycle drive-by was her signature, and it changed the way urban assassinations were carried out across both continents. This innovation was not just about efficiency, it was psychological warfare. The sight of a motorcycle slowing near a curb became enough to send dealers scattering. Fear spread faster than the bullets. The tactic was soon copied by other gangs in Medellin, then exported to Miami, where it would define the bloodiest years of the cocaine wars. Law enforcement struggled to keep up. Witnesses rarely saw faces, and the killers left little trace. The city's homicide rate climbed as Blanco's pistoleros enforced her will with impunity. In the end, the motorcycle hit became more than a tool. It was a calling card, a reminder that Blanco's reach extended into every corner of the drug trade. Her ability to weaponize fear, to turn the ordinary into the deadly, sustained her empire long after rivals and partners alike learned to dread the sound of an engine in the night. On July 11, 1979, the violence that had simmered in back alleys and shadowy warehouses erupted in broad daylight. Shoppers at Miami's Dadeland Mall, families and teenagers drifting through the food court, were caught off guard by a sudden, deafening barrage of gunfire. Two men, armed with submachine guns, stormed the parking lot and opened fire on a parked car. The bullets tore through glass and steel, leaving two people dead and bystanders scrambling for cover. Blood pooled on the hot asphalt beside scattered shopping bags. For the first time, the cartel's war had spilled into the open, transforming a suburban mall into a battlefield. Detective Robert Henderson of the Miami-Dade Homicide Division arrived to find a scene that would haunt him for years. The victims, both low-level associates linked to rival traffickers, had been executed with military precision. The shooters vanished before police could respond, leaving behind a trail of shell casings and a city in shock. Henderson later described the attack as a declaration of war on the public itself, noting that the sheer audacity of the crime shattered any illusion that Miami's cocaine violence would remain hidden from ordinary life. The Dadeland Massacre, as it came to be known, was unlike anything Miami had seen. Reporters swarmed the scene, their headlines introducing a new phrase, "cocaine cowboys," to describe the gunmen who brought cartel justice to the heart of suburban America. The homicide file from that day catalogs not just the dead, but the terror that rippled through the city. Witnesses recalled ducking behind cars, parents shielding children from the chaos. The mall, once a symbol of safety and routine, became a warning of how far the reach of cocaine money and power had grown. The scale and brazenness of the attack forced local and federal authorities to rethink their approach. Until then, much of the violence had played out in private, warehouse hits, drive-by shootings in poor neighborhoods, bodies dumped in canals. The Dadeland shooting broke that pattern. It was a message, delivered with gunfire and blood, that the rules had changed. The violence would no longer be contained. Miami was now ground zero for a new kind of drug war, one where no place was off limits and no one could claim innocence by proximity. In the words of Detective Henderson, After Dateland, nobody doubted who was in charge. The city belonged to the traffickers, and everyone else was just living in it. Federal agents closed in on January 23, 1985. Operation Mothership swept through Miami, raiding Blanco's home and her Golden Sands laundromat. The DEA file lists 500 kilograms of cocaine and $5 million in cash, bundled in heat-sealed bricks. Surveillance tapes captured her voice, calm and businesslike, laying out shipment schedules and enforcement orders. That morning, the illusion of untouchability shattered. Blanco was charged with conspiracy to import cocaine and money laundering, but she posted a $10 million bond and waited for trial in guarded comfort. The government's case hung on a single thread: Jorge Ayala, her former hitman who had turned state witness. In the 1994 Miami trial, Ayala described hotel room meetings, envelopes of cash, and the cold efficiency of murder contracts. He told the court that when she ordered a hit, the word no simply did not exist. Prosecutors believed Ayala's testimony could finally break the wall of silence that had shielded Blanco for years. But the trial unraveled in a way no one expected. A tabloid exposed Ayala's involvement in a phone sex scandal with a minor, casting doubt on his credibility. The judge ruled his testimony inadmissible. With their star witness discredited, prosecutors watched the case collapse. The murder charges dissolved, and Blanco slipped through the legal net once again. But the law was not the only threat. Betrayal was met with violence in Blanco's world, and no one was immune, not even her husbands. In 1975, Alberto Bravo, her first spouse and business partner, died in a Bogotá parking lot after a hail of gunfire. Police found Bravo's body riddled with bullets, the scene staged to look like a shootout. Years later, court testimony and informant statements pointed to Blanco as the architect of the killing, eliminating a partner she suspected of stealing and talking to authorities. Her second husband, Dario Sepulveda, vanished in 1983. Witnesses last saw him forced into a car in Little Havana. A note left behind read, "For the love of Griselda." The body was never found. Investigators and cartel insiders alike believed Blanco ordered his murder, closing ranks against any sign of betrayal. The cycle of violence that defined her reign did not end with her exile. On September 3, 2012, Blanco stepped out of a butcher shop in the Laureles neighborhood of Medellin. A motorcycle approached. The gunman fired an M16 rifle, striking her twice before disappearing into traffic. Blanco died instantly. She was killed by the very method she had pioneered decades before. The homicide report listed the case as unsolved, but the message was unmistakable. The architect of the motorcycle hit fell victim to her own invention. In the end, the empire she built on fear and blood left her alone, unprotected, and silenced by the violence she once commanded. Miami's skyline still bears the scars of her empire, an empire built on terror, blood, and billions in cocaine. Today, organized crime adapts, trafficking profits soar, and her methods echo in violence worldwide. Blanco's legacy is not myth, but a warning. Unchecked greed devours everything, even its creator. The true cost of power remains, and so does its shadow. Share your thoughts below.